Hello, I'm Sean Woolley, Managing Director of Cloudninespain. With me today I have...
Emma Kavanagh, Business Development Manager.
And Dominic, I am the Sales Director.
Very good. We're here today to discuss something that's very often asked of us, which is what are the best places to buy and how should we invest in a buy-to-let property here on the Costa Del Sol. And I think to start with, we need to understand the meaning of the term buy-to-let, because we're here in a holiday environment, a second home environment. So very often, first thing I would do with a client is, if they indicated that they wanted rental income from property, I would say, okay, are you buying the property with your heart or your head? And by that, I mean, are you buying purely for rental income? Is that the only consideration? And you'll be guided by the figures and the investment angle, or are you also interested in using the property yourself? In which case, obviously, lifestyle elements come into play. Are the family going to be able to enjoy it? The relatives, friends, whatever. What we're finding, I don't know about you guys, is that a lot of our clients have moved away from the investment-only model, which was obviously prolific in the height of the market when prices had boomed and people wanted any little bit of Spanish real estate. I think now people are more considered in their approach.
Agreed.
And are looking to primarily enjoy the property, but also want an element of rental to mainly cover the costs, but also if it provides them a few free holidays a year in their place, then
because your rentals would cover your community fees, your council tax, your rubbish collection.
Very often mortgage payments, which obviously is the biggest expense. So it very much depends on the type of client, the type of buyer, and what their main motivations are. So what I tend to do with my clients is we sit down, have a coffee or over lunch, and we'll talk about what they want, because very often what they want and what they think they want are two completely different things. There are two types of rental here on the Costa del Sol. The first is long-term rental, which we're not going to cover too much in this feature. That's obviously when you rent out the property for a period of 11-12 months and you get a regular monthly income coming in. And the one we're going to focus on today really is the short-term rental market, or the holiday rental market, where you're paid per night or per week. You often have a rental agent who does all the work for you and who can also manage the property on your behalf. So that's what we're going to focus on in today's discussion. Just before we start, because we're going to be mentioning a couple of terms that might not be familiar to some listeners, and I don't want to create any things that people don't understand. We're going to be talking about yield quite a bit, and the word yield basically means the income that you receive as a proportion of the property price. So for instance, if we talk about a 10% yield, that would equate to somebody receiving a €10,000 revenue from a property priced at €100,000. So that's what we mean by yield. Just to give you an indication of typical yields that people expect and investors expect in the UK, for those of you based there. Very often yield in the north of England, Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, would be, in terms of gross yield before costs, would be 7-8%, and you would end up netting around 5 or 6. In London it's considerably lower, okay, mainly because the property prices are so high. So you'd end up maybe looking at 4 to 5% if you're lucky gross, and ending up netting between 2.5 and 4, I would say. So they're figures just to base sort of where we're going on this, just so you've got a benchmark to have in place. Okay guys, so in terms of what sort of income people can expect by buying here on the Costa del Sol, what are your experiences? Have you found that those yields are similar?
I think a good yield here would be 5-6%.
Yeah.
Around 5 or 6%.
Yeah. And again, we're looking at the short term. The figures I've given you for London and northern cities in the UK are based on long-term rental. The figures don't differ too much when you consider short-term. The rule of thumb here tends to be that the amount you receive on a monthly basis on a long-term let, so say your property is worth €1,000 per month to someone looking to rent long-term, the rule of thumb is that it'll be worth €1,000 per week in the holiday letting market.
In the high season, which usually is July, August and September, or June, July and August.
Yeah. So those are the sorts of figures that we're talking about. Yeah, I think you're right. I think 6-7% is good, 4-5% is good. Again, it depends on the sort of occupancy that owners want. So if the owner says, actually, I'm going to use it with my family July and August, then you're going to lose out on pretty much your guaranteed rental season, aren't you? So it very much depends on a case-to-case basis. But I think if you were to not use the property at all, or just grab the odd weekend here and there, you would expect, I think, a 6 to 7% gross return. And once you've knocked off any fees and costs, probably
for a short-term let, I think you don't want to be using it in the children's holidays, the school holidays, for example, those prolific weeks of the year,
just like Easter holiday,
Easter, Christmas,
Semana Santa,
and the summer holidays, of course.
Exactly. And that brings us on to occupancy levels, because people quite naively think, I'll buy a property in Marbella or on the Costa del Sol somewhere, and I'm not going to use it, but I'll get 52 weeks rental a year. No. It's never going to happen. We have clients who have worked really hard in marketing their property and getting it on the books of various online portals and have a track record of success with their rentals, and they quite comfortably get 30-40 weeks, which is amazing.
After they build it up, though.
After they build it up.
I think it takes around 1, 2, 3 years
like
to build a pipeline like that.
And also those people are, as I say, quite aggressive in their marketing. They might have networks of friends, business colleagues back home that they advertise the property to, maybe at mates rates or whatever, but that's how they get that sustained
I think what you're trying to say as well is that it's important to see it as a business, which needs a business model, it needs marketing, it needs also costs, it has costs and investments to attract potential clients.
Yeah, and these places don't rent themselves.
Yeah, this naive thought that just because you have an apartment by the beach, people are going to be knocking on your door wanting to rent it. That's something of the past, and I do not think that happens anymore.
No, absolutely.
So we have to, define the two.
Yeah,
those first 12 months as well, when you put it on marketing for short-term rentals, they're the most important. So for you to get the property out there, get it marketed right, get it furnished right,
exactly.
Those 12 months, you might not get the rentals you expect, but it's going to grow over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's when you've got to give it the most shove, isn't it, in terms of effort to get it moving. In terms of occupancy levels, I have heard from various rental companies in the last couple of years that pretty much anything decent will rent July and August.
Agreed.
Because there tends to be such a demand from overseas clients, particularly, to rent a place for a week or two over the summer period. So if you have anything that looks half decent, you're probably going to be able to rent it in July and August, as long as your expectations on your rental figures are okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I read an article yesterday that said from all the tourists that come in the summer period, 40% of them rent a property, and 60% go to hotels and so forth.
Yeah, and it's not that, particularly when you as you come from the airport, you bypass Torremolinos, Benalmádena, Fuengirola. As you get into the Mijas Costa, then Marbella, Estepona areas, there aren't that many hotels.
No.
There's probably 4 or 5 five-star hotels, and then the rest are a mixture of sort of guest houses and lower quality hotels. It's not that many. No. Whereas you go to the swinging 60s resorts of Fuengirola, Torremolinos, it's like everywhere. Yeah. So people who have, a good property in Marbella, Estepona, Benavides, Mijas Costa, and they market it well, then they should expect to receive some good rental returns. Just going back to occupancy levels, because it's something we're asked all the time by clients. What can I expect? How many weeks can I rent it for? Tell me. The simple answer is we don't know. All that we can say is, as a guide, and depending on the type of property and the location and the price, as I say, you can expect to rent it all of July and August. You'd be very unlucky if you didn't. And half-term holidays, as you said, Easter holidays. And what you also want to be doing is getting those weeks in between all those times. I always say normally in year 1, when you're getting the thing moving, if you can achieve 15 to 20 weeks rental, you're doing pretty well.
That's a good start.
That's a good start. Some rental agents are a little bit more conservative. They say between 10 and 15, but they're the ones that tend to sit back and do nothing. But the ones who are pushing it and have a decent portfolio and the right size portfolio should be able to attain 15 to 20 weeks occupancy, in my opinion. If they're not, you need to be asking them why.
I think what we're also finding as well is the summer season extends now through to October, November.
It does, doesn't it?
So a lot of Swedish, Norwegian, Belgium, Northern European are renting short term for 3 months.
Yeah.
So for October, November, December, they're taking the property for those 3 months. So that would be classed as a short-term rental as well.
And what's interesting, because I did a study for an urbanization, you could see that the prices per night through Airbnb were the same for September, October, and December. They didn't change.
Right. Yeah.
So I think even that time, as you were saying, has a high demand, and they keep the prices stable.
Even just the last couple of years, we've noticed like traffic on the road, just the normal signals, day-to-day signals, it's been really busy up until pretty much Christmas. The dead times here are normally January, February.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So they're the times where you might not get anything even pushing really hard, and they might be the times to maybe do a bit of painting and freshen the thing up.
Which is very important.
Which is important to maintain, yeah. And then
And
March
use it themselves.
and use it themselves.
Finally,
Come and walk on the beach in 20-degree heat in the middle of February.
Yeah.
And then March, obviously, depending on the Easter timescales and half term, from March pretty much all the way through, there's a big demand. I think anything, as I say, from 15 weeks upwards is achievable, depending on how long you've had the property marketed, how good it is, the reviews you get from people, the more repeat visitors you get, and the more networking you do as an owner. Okay, but 30 weeks a year for established properties, not unheard of. As I said, defining why you're buying the property with head or with heart is really important, and very often those two things are mashed together. I'm a property investor too. I've invested in Spain, I've invested in London, and I understand that sometimes your head can rule your heart, or your heart can rule your head, and very often what you end up with is not necessarily the best investment on paper in terms of figures, but hey, it gives you a smile on your face every day because you like it. So we have to be honest about those things.
An example here could be buying with the heart, a golfer.
Yeah.
Absolutely adores golf, loves playing golf, loves watching golf, so frontline golf apartment. That's them buying with their heart. With their head, is it good for rentals?
No, and that brings us on to location. Location is absolutely critical in all of this because, as Emma said there, a lot of people assume that if they buy on a golf course, that they're going to get all the winter rents, they're going to get all the golfers coming between September and March and April who are just going to stay on the golf course. Believe you me, that's the last place a golfer wants to be. A golfer who comes away with his mates or with partners or whatever, they want to be near bars, restaurants, generally. I'm not saying
amenities.
all of them, but generally. So they want to be near amenities, really. And I always say, I imagine when you're looking at properties and you're looking to buy them to rent out, you've got to imagine your advert. You've got to imagine the advert that you're going to put online with Airbnb, with whoever, and the advert that you're going to send to your mates and your colleagues advertising this place, and it's got to tick as many boxes as possible. So it's got to tick, can you walk to amenities? Yes or no? Or are you near amenities at the very least? Are you near the beach? Are you near the airport? Are you near different? All of these things people look at, and
what facilities are actually in place in the apartment? That's also important. Is it just a room with a bed, or do you have aircon, on the floor heating, TV, satellite, child friendly? What do you have in the community, which is also important?
Exactly. And obviously, it's very difficult to buy a property that's near the beach, near the town, near the golf club, near the airport. So some things do have to give a little bit, but that's where you have to kind of put your trust in an expert on the ground here, because we have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of people come here and buy properties for this very reason, where they might want to enjoy it for holidays, they also want to rent it out to make some income, and we've seen people get it wrong and not follow our advice, and we've seen people get it absolutely bang on right. And so please listen to us, please. We haven't got all the answers, but we will at least be able to guide you in the right direction. What are the important things for holiday makers? Because again, imagine writing that advert, I can walk to the beach, I can walk to the shops and bars and restaurants, I'm 30 minutes away from the airport. What else is important to them?
Public transport could also be one. People that want to actually use the buses or the trains, or a taxi rank be close to the apartment, that could be one. People that don't drive.
Facilities for children, but let's focus maybe inside the apartment, right? Basics like an air conditioning system, a satellite TV with channels in maybe the native language. The community, does it have a pool that's heated? Does it have a gym? All these factors are really important.
And the more of those factors that you can tick on your little advert, the better chance you've got of being able to rent.
It creates a bigger attraction for the client.
Of course it does, because if you imagine, we don't have holiday brochures anymore, do we? We never look at them. Like, remember, we used to sit down and go, oh, look at that. But it's a similar thing. You've got to imagine looking through it and your property standing out, and for people to go, wow, this has got everything. Let's book it.
Because just to give an example, there are two beachfront urbanizations. One has a communal pool that's heated, covered pool, a gymnasium, a sauna and a spa, and walking distance beach. And it rents out for 250 euros a night. Next to it, and I did this research for a client the other day, you find the same property also for 250, but it doesn't have all the amenities inside the community. It doesn't have an indoor pool, it doesn't have a sauna, it doesn't have a gym. So that's your direct competitor that you are trying to beat. Well, obviously you're probably succeeding because you have more to offer. That's important to note here.
It is. The only downside with that as an owner and as an investor is that you obviously, the more facilities you have on site that you can offer to your guests, the more you're going to have to pay for them.
Yeah.
So if you do have a heated pool and you have 24-hour security and you have tennis courts and whatever, saunas, it's the owners who pay for them. So that's going to come out of your community fees, which is obviously an expense that you pay. The tenant isn't going to pay that.
But that's deductible. I think we'll come to that
as well.
That's deductible,
yeah. Well, in terms of taxable deductions. So, but still, it's going to come out of your yield. So if your community fees are 500 euros a month as opposed to 200 euros a month.
But then the question is, how many more clients you attract through that?
And certainly you
availability.
Charge more per night for that apartment than the one without the facilities.
Unless it gets very, very competitive. And you have to either drop your rates to compete. So you've got to stand out in certain ways. And I think one of the ways that you can do that is to furnish your property in a really smart way. We have a relationship with a really good furniture company, Marbella Interiors, who specialise in this sort of stuff, and they can furnish an apartment in a really nice contemporary way for not a huge cost. People think you have to spend fortunes. Having said that, the better that you furnish the property, maybe slightly more money you can spend on that, the more return you're going to get from it. Because people do look at stuff like that, and it might not necessarily attract the initial renter. But believe you me, when that person goes back to their home country and says, I had the most amazing holiday, I stayed in this apartment on the beach and it had fantastic furniture and it just felt like a home from home, you're going to get more bookings.
Yeah.
That's what you want, home from home, I think, when you rented an apartment.
They're also visually much more attractive because I did a research on the rentals in a beachfront community, and all the ones that were old styled, I disregarded immediately.
Yeah.
I think something tatty and old just doesn't. Photos is,
So immediately puts you into the bottom shelf.
Yes.
So I don't understand why more people are doing such a little investment to attract much more attention.
Yeah.
Because people aren't experienced.
Yeah.
Because
this comes back to the naivety where you think just because you have a property here, it will rent out immediately.
Yeah.
That it's a business model. It needs to be approached as a business, and things have to be done from A to Z to be perfect.
You've got to stand out.
Yeah.
I mean, the properties that I have in London, and also the properties that I've bought here and in the UK that I've flipped, sold quite quickly afterwards as an investment. Probably the single most important thing I've ever done is furnish them almost to show flat standards and show home standards, and then get them professionally photographed. That is the best investment you can make in all of this, because the internet is the shop window now.
Yes, exactly.
And there's hundreds, if not thousands, of properties, and you scroll
They only
past.
visually purchase things.
Yeah.
If you go to an apartment that's got horrible furniture, uncomfortable beds, really old, you're not generally going to go back. You might have had a nice holiday.
And you wouldn't even recommend it.
You wouldn't recommend it. But go to an apartment that's home from home, really comfortable, all the facilities. You're going to go home, recommend it. You're going to book again.
And the B-bags, I think, are so essential to keep this pipeline straight, where you want 30 to 40 weeks a year. You have to count on the B-bags that come.
Yeah, because you've got to get positive reviews. I mean, Airbnb can be a cruel game, because if you get one person saying, I think your apartment's crap, you're out of it.
And the competition, the level of competition here, especially in the prime locations, is rather big.
It is, but
So
you can still make
you
money
can,
if you do it properly.
And most people don't stand out. So if you use little tricks like we just described with the furniture, just the furniture, it will immediately elevate you from 50% of the stuff that's in that urbanization.
Yeah, it's true. And this comes back to the photos as well, because the amount of people, I mean, crikey, we deal predominantly with sales, and the amount of properties we come across on our databases we have thousands. The amount that are photographed correctly is a very small proportion, I would say. The
like
amount of photos
5%.
we see, why don't people just use a wide-angle lens? Why don't people turn the lights on? Why don't people get rid of
open the curtains?
Open the curtains, get rid of the stuff on the bathroom cabinets. You've got to think about this. You've got to advertise it as a show home that people are going to want to stay in time and time again. Why would they want to see your dirty clothes?
it
Makes no
would
sense.
never justify the price you pay either.
No.
Right? Because if you go to a hotel, you would also maybe pay 200, 300, but everything is perfect.
Exactly.
So you gotta copy paste that
Yeah.
module to your own property.
Even little things as well, like you could put a welcome pack in when they arrive.
exactly.
Some small toiletries in the bathroom. Little things like that just make
Details.
that extra special.
Very well
It's
said.
absolutely crucial. I think also in terms of managing your investment from a distance. So if you're not here in the Costa del Sol, it's difficult. It's difficult, and there's also a degree of trust involved. You're hundreds, if not thousands, of miles away, and you're having someone in the Costa del Sol looking after your property, but there's no other option. So my recommendation to you is to find a really good management company. It doesn't really matter what you're doing about attracting the rentals, because there's people here who can do that. I always say you probably need a multi-channel approach initially, in terms of you doing some of the stuff, a rental company here doing some, going on a couple of portals like Airbnb and
TripAdvisor.
a whole load of stuff you can do, but you need a one port of call here in terms of a management company or a rental company to coordinate it.
And usually the cost for for management companies is between 15 and 30%.
That's for the rental. That's for the
For
rental
the
commission.
yeah.
But the management, they normally charge an annual fee. So normally it's around 400, 500 euros, and for that they'll go in and check your property for storm damage and any problems. Normally once a week, once every couple of weeks, and then if there's anything that does need fixing, or there's been a leak or something like that, they'll charge you by the hour for the repairs, and for any parts that obviously need replacing. But for the actual rental companies who attract bookings for you, they will normally take a commission of, sometimes it can be up to 20%.
Yeah, from 15 being the most modest to
the 15%. So the more bookings you
30.
can find yourself, and maybe refer them on, and maybe negotiate a smaller fee with them for ones that you find. That's what I did in the UK. Then obviously it means you get more money in your pocket rather than theirs, which is
actually
always good.
a client of mine is renting out, and after 3 years he established such good contact list, that he only rents to the B-backs, and he completely cut out a company to search for clients.
So he has commission free.
So he has 20% less cost involved immediately. But that only happened because he really put an eye to detail, as we're discussing. Always checking if it's up to the high standard, if the furniture is looking neat and clean. Anything that's dirty, it would be repaired. Anything that would disgust a person. Because if I'm very fragile when it comes to things like this, if I go to a bathroom and there's just a bit of hair lying around that hasn't been cleaned properly, I immediately feel unwelcome. But he is very detailed on that, and that's why he built such an amazing track record. And now old clients call him up, he books them in for the year. I think he gets like 40, 50 weeks.
And that's lovely. There's that degree of trust on both sides really as well. Because what you don't want, obviously, as an owner and an investor, is to let your property out to someone who's going to abuse it. I've just had that experience in London, which wasn't pleasant. And that's where a bond comes into play. So if somebody breaks something or puts a hot coffee cup on a wooden table and scars it, then there's ways and means of recouping.
But to differentiate him, he was one that bought it with his head. He's very calculated. He did studies of different areas. He did a thorough investigation, because for him it was, as I said before, a pure business investment. And that has to be treated as one as well.
I mean, we have probably 4 or 5 developments that I can think of straight off the top of my head that are really fantastic rental investments. The ones I'm mainly thinking of are quite near Puerto Banús. Just set back a little bit, so you don't, you're not on top of it, but you can walk into it. So you advertise, walk into Puerto Banús. Walk to local shops, bars, restaurants, pool on site, lovely balconies, and they're not expensive to buy. We're not talking €500,000 here. We're talking probably half that price. So, please do speak to us if you are interested in getting into the rental market here. We can point you in the right direction, and we'd be really happy to help you. We also have specialist professional advisors who can advise you on tax implications. Obviously there's tax to pay, there's income tax to pay, which is 19% for non-residents, European EU non-residents. There'll be reciprocal tax arrangements with your home country, I'm sure. And there's also a lot of things that you can offset as well, a lot of the costs, which I know a lot of our home countries are starting to abolish, but here you can still
It's great, it's actually
offset.
it's a huge list. Like the mortgage interest rate, you can deduct that. The EB, which is the yearly tax for the property, the community fees, you can also deduct that, electricity, water, house insurance, and the legal and accounting costs that you have.
So there's lots of things there.
The management fees.
Yeah, the management fees as well.
Yeah.
So lots of things there.
That's really important for the yield.
Yeah,
just to
absolutely.
say, because the more you can deduct, the bigger your yield will be.
And I think it's a really good time to invest in property here. You know, Marbella, the Costa del Sol has really grown up again, even over the last 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of things here to do, as you already know, in terms of the lifestyle. And if you are looking for a holiday home, which I think a lot of people want to have a holiday home, but we don't need one. But if you can combine a holiday home with something that also returns you some money that effectively pays for your mortgage, pays for all your bills, and pays for you to come out a couple of times a year, that's a really powerful and strong proposition.
Let's face it,
That's a
nobody
win-win.
wants a holiday home in Manchester, do they?
Oh, hey,
Apart from me.
some people might. I've never been. I would like to go.
Would you? Yeah, maybe not. So yeah, there's a lot of really good things, and also the fact that finance is cheap. You know, it's cheap to get a mortgage, so your running costs are as low as they're probably ever going to be at the moment. So my advice to you is at least come and explore, have a look, and if you choose to work with us, we'll certainly give you the best advice we possibly can.
Yeah, it's actually, just to note what you said, very important, because there are a few little details like having to get a touristic license for your property. We can help you out in actually getting one, or what is necessary to obtain a license. You do need this touristic license for your apartments.
It's good news.
Yeah, if you want to advertise on Airbnb, for instance, or other portals, you need the code that you get once you get the touristic license.
And it's important to get it. People think, oh, it's just hassle. It is a little bit of hassle, but somebody else can do it for you. And also, it means that you're legal. And it's good for the industry as a whole, because it means that it's taken out the cowboy people who are just trying to do it willy-nilly and haven't put aircon in and haven't done this and aren't going to look after their
Which also
tenants.
ruined the image of rentals here in Spain.
So now it's a serious business. It's a
regulated,
business.
no?
Yeah, it's regulated, and you can make money and you can enjoy the property. So what's not to love?
It's a win-win.
Yeah. On that note, we will leave you be, and of course, if you do want to make contact with us, please do. Many
Ciao.
thanks. Bye bye.